Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be looking at something, well, it's pretty powerful, honestly. It's 50 journal prompts, and these prompts are meant for healing from trauma. We actually got all these from a blog post. It's on a website called Get This Lestallion. And the funny thing is, Lestallion is a website that also sells journals. So they really got you covered. They got you covered for the reflection you're going to be doing. But on a more serious note, before we even get into any of these prompts, I just want to say I think it's really important to remember that journaling is not just for those people that are really expressive, the writers, it's really for anyone. It's for anyone that wants to explore their thoughts and feelings, and anyone that, ultimately wants to work towards healing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Journaling can be such a powerful tool. And I think especially when it comes to processing any kind of trauma. And what I find really fascinating about these particular prompts is how they take this whole complex healing process and they break it down into these steps.
Yeah.
And they're really manageable steps. Each of them focus on a different aspect of recovery.
Yeah, okay, so the blog post, it actually lays out 5 of these key areas.
Yeah.
And they are understanding the impact, processing emotions, releasing the past, rebuilding trust, and finally, embracing hope. And I got to say, just even hearing those categories, I'm already kind of feeling a bit introspective. So where should we even begin with this?
Well, I think when talking about this, it's important to define what we're talking about, what we mean by trauma, because it's not just about these really major life events. Trauma can be any experience that overwhelms our ability to cope, and it can leave like a lasting impact on our emotional and mental well-being. So all of these prompts, they're really designed to help us process those experiences, the big ones and even the small ones, and then ultimately to begin to heal.
Yeah, okay. That really makes a lot of sense. So maybe we should start then with understanding the impact, because that could be a really good place to just kind of ground ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's this one prompt that asks, what is one way that your trauma has affected how you see yourself? And it's pretty direct, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It is direct. And I think that's intentional a lot of times. Trauma can really distort our self-perception. It can lead to all these negative self-beliefs or these feelings of worthlessness. And this prompt, I think, it encourages us to really examine those beliefs and really confront the ways that trauma has shaped how we see ourselves, our self-image. It's about bringing those hidden consequences up to the surface.
Yeah, it's like you're holding up this mirror to yourself, and you're seeing these parts of yourself that you might have been avoiding. And speaking of things that we might avoid, there's another prompt here that I think it's really powerful. It says, what is one memory related to your trauma that feels the hardest to let go of?
That's a tough one. But I think it highlights something really crucial about trauma. Because certain memories, they can become like these anchors, they just weigh us down and they prevent us from moving forward. So this prompt, it's encouraging us to explore, like, why do those memories hold such power? To understand their significance and how they continue to affect us. So it's not necessarily about forgetting, but it's more about understanding the why behind the lingering impact.
So it's kind of like you're a detective trying to uncover the clues
Yeah.
behind these persistent memories. But how do we actually start unpacking those memories?
Well, there are a couple approaches you could try. One technique is to focus on the emotions that are associated with that memory. So you could ask yourself, okay, what feelings come up when I recall this? Are there any physical sensations? That I notice. Another strategy is to try to identify any triggers that might bring up that memory. And once you know your triggers, you can start to develop coping mechanisms to manage those reactions.
Yeah, that's really practical advice. It's not just about dwelling on the past, but it's about actually taking steps to understand and manage its impact on the present.
Exactly. And it's important to remember, too, this is just one approach. There are many techniques out there, and it's all about finding what works best for you.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding the impact of trauma on our self-image and how certain memories can really stick with us. But I'm curious, how do emotions fit into all of this?
Well, that's where the next category comes in, processing emotions. Trauma often leaves us with this whole jumble of feelings, sadness, anger, fear. And it can be really tempting to try to just suppress or ignore those emotions. But the truth is, allowing ourselves to feel those emotions, that's actually a crucial part of healing.
So it's not about trying to be happy all the time. It's more about allowing yourself to experience the full spectrum of emotions, even the difficult ones.
Exactly. And one prompt that really speaks to this is, how do you feel when you allow yourself to cry about your trauma? Crying can be incredibly cathartic. It's like you're releasing all those pent-up emotions. You're giving them a physical outlet. And I think it's important to emphasize here, allowing yourself to cry, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It's a natural response to pain, and it's a sign that you're allowing yourself to process these experiences.
Yeah, that's such a powerful message, and I think it really speaks to the importance of self-compassion in this whole process. It's about being kind to ourselves and allowing ourselves to feel
Right.
what we need to feel.
Absolutely. And, there's another prompt here in this section that I think is really important, especially because it deals with an emotion that often gets a bad rap. It asks, how do you handle anger related to your trauma?
Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think that prompt is so important?
Well, anger is a very natural response to trauma. It's a way of expressing our hurt, our frustration, and even, a sense of injustice. But so often we're taught to suppress anger, especially I think women are taught to suppress anger. And this prompt, it's encouraging us to acknowledge our anger as a valid emotion, but also to find healthy ways to express and manage it. So it's about understanding the root of that anger and finding ways to work through it that are constructive rather than letting it control us.
So it's not about condoning any harmful actions, but it's about recognizing anger as a signal that something needs to be addressed. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we talked about understanding the impact of trauma, processing emotions. What comes next in this journey?
Well, after we acknowledge the impact and we start to process those emotions, the next step is usually releasing the past. And this doesn't mean like forgetting what happened. It's more about finding ways to loosen its grip on us, recognizing what's no longer serving us, and choosing to move forward.
I like that. Choosing to move forward. It implies that we have a choice,
Yeah.
even though sometimes trauma can feel like it's defining our entire lives.
Yeah, there was one prompt in this category that really resonated with me. It asked, what is one thing you've been holding on to from your trauma that you're ready to let go of?
It's such a simple question,
Yeah,
but it just feels so profound.
it is. Yeah, it is profound. And sometimes it's those simplest questions that are the most powerful. Like we're inviting ourselves to take inventory of what we're carrying, what burdens we're clinging to. And then we're actually giving ourselves permission to release those burdens and to make space for healing and growth.
Yeah, it makes me think about the whole concept of forgiveness, such a loaded word. But there's a prompt in this category that asks, how do you feel when you think about forgiveness? And I think that's like such a gentle way to approach such a complex topic.
Yeah, it is gentle. And I think that's really important because forgiveness, it's not about condoning what happened or minimizing the pain at all. It's about acknowledging that harm was done, but choosing not to let it define us or poison our future. And I think it's important to remember that forgiveness is a process. It's not a destination. It can take time. And it often involves forgiving ourselves as well as forgiving those who hurt us.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not a one-time thing. It's like this ongoing process of letting go and making peace with the past. But after releasing the past, what's next? How do we start to rebuild our lives after going through something traumatic?
Well, that's where the next category comes in. Rebuilding trust. Trauma, it can really shatter our sense of trust, and not just in other people, but also in ourselves. So this section is all about restoring that trust, piece by piece.
It makes me think about the prompt that asks, how do you begin to trust yourself again after trauma? Because I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. After experiencing something traumatic, it can be so hard to trust our own judgment, our instincts, even our own memories sometimes.
It absolutely can be. That's why that prompt is so vital. It's encouraging us to start paying attention to those inner whispers, reconnecting with our intuition, and reclaiming that sense of agency. It's about recognizing that we have that wisdom and strength within ourselves to heal and to make wise choices.
Yeah, it's like we're learning to trust our inner compass again after it's been knocked off course. But rebuilding trust isn't just about trusting ourselves, is it? It's also about learning to trust other people again.
You're exactly right. And there's actually a prompt that speaks directly to this. It asks, what is one way you can practice trusting others in your life? So this is encouraging us to take small steps, to start with people that we feel safe with, and gradually expand our circle of trust.
Yeah, those baby steps towards connection and vulnerability.
Yeah.
I imagine that can feel really scary. For someone who's been hurt in the past, what advice would you give to someone who's struggling with that fear?
I would say start small and be patient with yourself. It's okay to be cautious. Choose people who have proven themselves to be trustworthy, people who respect your boundaries and make you feel safe. And remember, trust is built over time through consistent actions and open communication. It's not something that happens overnight.
So it's about finding those safe harbors,
Yeah.
those people who can support us as we navigate this whole process.
And rebuilding trust.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we've talked
Yeah.
about understanding the impact, processing emotions, releasing the past, and rebuilding trust. That feels
Yeah.
like a lot of heavy listening. Where do we go from here? Is there light at the end of the tunnel?
Absolutely. And that's where our final category comes in, embracing hope. This section is all about shifting our focus from the pain of the past to the possibility of a brighter future. It's about finding those glimmers of light that keep us going, even when things feel really challenging.
Yeah, I love that image. Glimmers of light. There's a prompt in this category that I think really captures that feeling and asks, how do you stay hopeful when the healing process feels overwhelming?
Mm.
And I think we all have those moments, right, where it just feels like we're just not making any progress.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that one really resonated with me too, because I think we all have those times where we just feel like, ooh, it's just not happening.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly why I think this prompt is so crucial, because it's encouraging us to think about, okay, what are those things that can nourish my sense of hope, especially when things feel really difficult? You know, it could be people in my life. It could be activities, certain beliefs. You know, it could be something as simple as spending time in nature or listening to some uplifting music or connecting with loved ones. Yeah, those little rituals, they can make such a big difference. And I think it's important to remember, too, that hope isn't about, you know, pretending like everything's okay.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging the challenges, but still believing that healing and growth are possible.
Exactly. Hope is a powerful force, and it can really sustain us through those really dark times. And, you know, there's another prompt in this category that I just think is so beautiful. It asks, what is one positive change you've noticed in yourself as you've healed?
Oh, I love that one. Yeah, it's like we're celebrating those small victories, those signs that we are making progress, even if it doesn't always feel like it.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in what's still difficult. But I think taking the time to acknowledge those positive changes, to acknowledge those moments of growth, that can be so empowering because it reminds us that we are capable of healing, that we are resilient, and that we are moving forward.
Yeah, it's like we're collecting those little glimmers of hope and we're weaving them together into something stronger, something that can guide us through the rest of our journey. But I'm curious, what about when? You know, those glimmers of hope, they feel really faint. What happens when, you know, the healing feels slow or even stagnant?
Yeah, well, that's where resilience comes in. You know, healing, it's not always a linear process. There will be setbacks. There will be plateaus, even moments where it feels like you're taking steps backward. But it's in those moments that we really need to dig deep and draw on that inner strength.
It's like a lobia. We're climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
And sometimes the path gets really steep or rocky. And we might need to just pause, catch our breath, maybe even adjust our route. But as long as we keep our eyes on the summit, we'll get there eventually.
Exactly. And there's a prompt that speaks to this challenge. It asks, how do you hold on to hope when healing feels slow? And I think that's such an important reminder that even when the progress is subtle, it's still happening. Sometimes it's happening beneath the surface in ways that we can't always see or even feel right away.
Yeah, it's about trusting the process, even when it's frustrating or even discouraging. But how do we actually cultivate that trust? You know, what are some things we can do, some practical things, to stay connected to hope, especially in those challenging moments?
Well, I think it goes back to those little rituals we talked about earlier, spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones, engaging in activities. That just brings us joy. It's about intentionally creating moments of peace and nourishment for ourselves, even when things feel chaotic.
And it's about celebrating, you know, those small victories, those moments of progress. No matter how small they might seem, there's a prompt that asks, how do you celebrate the small victories in your healing process? Why is that such a crucial element of the journey?
Because it reinforces our resilience.
Yeah.
You know, it reminds us that we are capable of moving forward. We're capable of overcoming these challenges. Each small victory is a step in the right direction. And acknowledging those steps can really help us stay motivated and hopeful, even when the path ahead feels long.
Yeah. It's like we're giving ourselves a little pat on the back.
Yeah.
You know, saying, hey, you're doing a good job. Keep going. And those small celebrations, they can add up to something really powerful over time.
They absolutely can. You know, as we've been talking about these prompts, I've been really struck by how much they emphasize the importance of self-compassion. It's like a thread that runs through all 5 categories.
You're right, yeah. Whether it's acknowledging the impact of trauma, allowing ourselves to feel our emotions, or celebrating our victories, it really all comes back to treating ourselves with kindness and understanding.
Exactly. And that's something I would want to emphasize for anyone listening who's on this healing journey. Be gentle with yourself. You're doing the best you can with what you've been through. Healing takes time, and it's not always easy, but with patience,
Yeah.
self-compassion, and a little bit of hope, it is possible.
That's such a powerful message, I think. It's the perfect way to wrap up our deep dive today. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought-provoking question. Inspired by everything that we've discussed today, what is one small act of self-care or self-compassion that you can commit to today to support your own healing process? It can be something as simple as taking a few deep breaths, listening to your favorite song, or spending some time in nature. Just remember, even the smallest gestures of kindness towards yourself can make a world of difference.
Beautifully said. And remember, you are not alone on this journey. There are so many resources available to support you, including therapists, support groups, and even online communities. So don't hesitate to reach out for help if you need it.
Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive into healing. Until next time, keep exploring, keep healing, and keep believing in the power of your own resilience.